Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be focusing on some of the basic Visual Studio shortcuts. So like I was explaining in the previous video on value types, I want to start with some of the basics so that we can be as proficient as possible. And so part of that is understanding how to use the software that we're using to write our programs. And so first thing, when we're using single file plugins, we don't really have to build, but if you want to build, you absolutely can, because we are using a project. Assuming that you've created it using the Eclipse scripting wizard, or script wizard rather. So up at the top there's a build tab, and so when you select that, there's a build solution. The shortcut that you can see that is it'll say F6. So I believe that might actually run the debugger, but really all we need is there's a shortcut that's Control Shift and B, and it looks like there's another one for Control. Let's see, what did it say? It said Shift F6. So if you want to use that, you can. Look, I guess you can as well. I just use Control Shift B. Okay. To me, that's just easier than reaching up for the F6. But and then if you look in the output section, there may be a tab. If you don't see that, then you'll go and you'll select View, and there should be like an output. Where is it? Yeah, so output. So that will show it at the bottom, and then you can see all the shortcuts listed here as well, right? Okay, so if we look at our output, it just tells us that build, it succeeded. So whether it failed, whether it was up to date, or whether it skipped, and then it'll give us some information here. And then let's say it failed, then we'll have this error list, and it will tell us, where it failed. We might also see some red marks, or that sort of thing. Okay, so that's building. And okay, so line manipulation. So there's a lot of times where we may write some code, and then we may decide, oh, you know what, I'd actually like this to be somewhere else, or maybe I want to move this above something else. Okay, so the first thing, like we can go up here. In our previous video, we went over some value types. Okay, so like let's say we wanted to move this, numbers above text. So we could highlight it, right click it, we could say cut, okay, and then we could come up here, hit enter a couple of times, and then we could right click, select, paste, or we could use the shortcut Control V, right? So there's some, if you're familiar with typing or Windows or anything, then you're probably familiar with Control C and Control V. Those are common Windows shortcuts for copying and pasting. Okay, so the same thing for this. Okay, but one of the great things about Visual Studio is that you can actually just move it, right? So if you hold down the Alt key, you have it highlighted, and you hold down the Alt key and then use up or down, it will actually move it for you. Okay, so you could absolutely do Control X for cut, and then go up, hit enter, and paste it, right? And I've just hit Control Z to undo. So that's another thing. If you want to undo something, then Control Z is a very useful shortcut for that. But let's say you've undone something, and then you're like, oh no, I actually want that to happen. Control Y will actually redo it. Okay, so Control Z and Control Y are for undoing and redoing tasks that you've just undone, or whatever. So moving lines that's just really useful. And like let's say you want to create an if statement, right? So we have an if statement there, but let's say we want to create another one, and let's say we want to know, let's see, let's say we want to check to see if the plan is actually there. So like let's say if plan is not equal to null, right, then we want to do stuff, right? So let's say we want to move all of this up into that. So instead of copying it and pasting it, we can do that. We can use the Alt and then up key. Okay, let's say, so if you notice, we have all of this stuff is now in line with that, right, with the tab. Now we can highlight it and press tab to tab over, or we can do Control KD, right? So like let's say you moved a lot of things, and instead of having to highlight everything and then tab it over, then you can use Control KD, right? Or like let's say for some reason something's like really out of whack, right? And it can be a pain to have to shift tab it all the way over. So in order to fix that, what you can do is just Control KD. Whoop. I did Control KC, which actually brings us to the next shortcut. Is that, like, let's say we're like, okay, we actually don't want to use this, or maybe we want to rewrite it in a certain way. Well, you have these comments, right? So if you don't want to use it, you have two options. You can either delete it, which you probably don't want to do, right? Because maybe you want to reference it or something like that. So you can either delete it or you can comment it out. So there's an option up here. Maybe it's under tools. Let's see. Maybe edit. Maybe it's under edit. I know there's a way to do it. I just can't remember. Maybe view, project. It doesn't really matter. So it's up here somewhere, but at least I think it is. But the shortcut for it is just Control KC. And then maybe you want to uncomment something. Like you're like, oh, well shoot, I commented all of that. And maybe I didn't mean to comment this section. So now I can do Control KU for uncommenting something. So the reason that I want to discuss these things is that you might see me doing something like really quickly, like commenting a bunch of stuff or uncommenting a bunch of stuff, or maybe deleting something or like moving it. And I want to make sure that you're aware that you're on the same page. So I don't want you to get lost in trying to figure out what I just did. Okay, so let's uncomment this. Now the other thing is, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good use. I guess adding a comment would be a good example for right here. But like, let's say we want to add, I don't know. Let's say for whatever reason, I really don't have a good example right here. But for whatever reason, let's say we wanted to add a note here, right? And maybe we wanted it to be out in space somewhere. Well, we can't click out there, okay? Now, if we hold down Alt, though, it now gives us access to all of the spaces everywhere. So we can actually click somewhere, okay? And then we can add a note, right? So I can't really type that well. On a note. Okay. But let's say we wanted to add maybe the same thing on all these lines, right? Then we can hold down Alt and drag our mouse around, and it will give us access to all of those lines. So now we can say on a note, right? Okay, so that's useful. You know, you might be like, well, that's kind of weird, right? Well, so now I can't actually highlight all of this without doing that, right? If I just click, hold, and drag, I can't just select this. So that's when it's useful. Like, let's say you've written something similar on a bunch of lines in a row and you want to delete all of them. Or maybe you want to add in something on all of those lines, right? You can hold down Alt and select those sections, and then you can add that, you know, whatever, you know, maybe you want to say .to list, to a bunch of things, right? You can do that all at once using that. So holding down Alt, click, hold, and drag, that will do that. But like, let's say we wanted to, you know, comment all this out. We could also do that way. We could just go like that. Okay. All right. So that's Alt. Okay. Let's see. So we can delete lines by doing, like you could cut it, right? A shortcut for Control V or Control X, right, is also Shift delete. I don't think, yeah, so it actually does cut it. So I held down Shift and selected delete, or hit delete, and then I came up, I could go like down here and do Control V, and it's pasting that. So Shift delete is actually is also a shortcut for Control X. So that can be useful if you want to delete like a bunch of lines, you know, in a row, or you could just Control X, and I guess that will do the same thing. Okay, let's see. Will that allow me to cut? Oh wow, that's interesting. I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that they were the same. You know, add a comment down below if you know of somehow that they're not the same. Maybe there's a difference between Shift D and Control X. I don't know. Maybe it's for people who don't have Windows. Maybe you don't have. Well, you have the command thing. I don't know. I don't know what the shortcut is on a Mac. But anyway, so that's interesting. All right, so those are some of the basic line manipulations. And if I think of anything, I'll bring it up. We've already talked about commenting, so that's good. And all right, so we're at 12 minutes. So I think we'll go ahead and stop here. And then we'll cover some things about things that you might want to consider when writing code in the next video. All right, so thanks everyone. Hope you have a great day. And if you want to follow along, be sure to like and subscribe so that you'll be notified. All right, take care.